Hey everyone, welcome back to Cincinnati Zoo Tales. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Mark. Thanks for tuning in today.
Yeah, we are here. It's my favorite time of year. And we are going to do a themed month of October with, in hand quotes, spooky animals. Now, the thing that's spookiest to me, though, about all of this is Mark thinks that fall is the worst time of year. And I am just... I probably shouldn't even tell people. They're going to think less of you. Who hates fall, Mark?
My Q score just went way down.
I'm obsessed with fall. I'm obsessed with spooky, Halloween, true crime, all of that. And you don't like fall. Why again?
Jenna's the Halloween queen around these parts. And I'm not trying to disrespect. It's just, you know, I'm a bigger fan of the spring when it's like we're working into the warm season. Now it's a little bit depressing for me because like the summer's over with. It's getting darker earlier. I really like my nighttime walks. And now it's getting dark at like 7 p.m. Soon it's going to be dark at 5 p.m. And I'm just not going to know what to do with myself.
But that is winter. You can't have something against fall. Winter is the issue here. But seriously, on a serious note, we wanted to go over some different animals that a lot of people might find spooky or scary or don't like for whatever reason. And we want to change your minds. Hopefully. Maybe just like 50%. Help you like these animals more. So, we have a special guest today, also named Jenna. Mark, I'll let you do the intros.
Yeah, today we're being joined by Jenna Lamping, who's one of the senior keepers in our reptile department. And like Jenna said, she's here to change some of our minds about these quote-unquote creepy, crawly animals. Thank you so much for joining us today, for spending your time to educate us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited. I do think a little bit less of you because I love fall.
Yes.
So,
oh, man.
Well, I don't want her to
think disappointed,
but I'm glad she's on my side.
I'm outnumbered here.
Yeah, you're definitely outnumbered. No, I like you a lot. I just think you have very bad opinions.
Okay, so speaking of opinions, I was asking our team earlier, and Mark and I have had this discussion, like, and I've talked about with my family, and why do people find certain animals, like snakes, spiders, and whatnot, creepy when nothing's ever happened to them? They haven't actually had a scary moment with them, or maybe seen one as scary to them, but, you know, for example... I like spiders, but my younger sister, it's one of her biggest fears, but we were raised by the same parents. It's not like our parents went around telling us that spiders were bad or having big reactions when there was a spider in the house or anything. So it's very interesting to me why, and we want to kind of talk about the myths around snakes and have you tell us the cute things or the fun things or actually just really interesting things about snakes in general. But we always start off by asking our guest kind of how you got to where you are. How did you always know you wanted to be a reptile keeper? How did you get started at the zoo or in this field, that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually switched out my major junior year of college and decided I wanted to be a zookeeper, even though I was told the challenges it would, you know, to get there, it would be really tough, very competitive. But I was like, you know, zoos are amazing. I grew up here in Cincinnati. I've always loved the Cincinnati Zoo, and I wanted that to be my goal. So I got an internship in 2015, right out of college. I worked with Wild Encounters, did some guest outreach. I got to work with a lot of snakes, a lot of other animals. I've always liked snakes. My first snake that I had at home was a ball python in college. So I always appreciated them. And I had the opportunity to become a temp keeper at Reptile House, where I got to, I think my aha moment was I got to watch an Angolin python hatch from its egg. And that was
so cool.
The most incredible experience. And it was, as I was watching this animal, it was just like, yep, that's what I want to do forever. So here I am now. It's been 5 years full-time reptiles, and I couldn't be happier. I'm so excited to talk about snakes. I think they're amazing. And yeah, I just live and breathe reptiles and amphibians.
So I have to ask, what were you studying or planning on doing before you decided you wanted to be a zookeeper?
Yeah, when I first started college, I started with criminal justice, actually.
Oh,
because
do you like true crime too?
I love true crime.
That's why you guys like Halloween so much. You're
Probably
true
we like
crime
the
people.
spooky stuff in general. Maybe that's a common denominator. I don't know. Love the true crime. I really wanted to be a park ranger or work with the canine, still with animals. Kind of. I wanted to be one of those officers riding a horse.
Wow.
You know,
Oh, yeah,
those are
yeah.
cool. So still kind of animal related. Mm-hmm. And then I weirdly went to psychology, which is another, I guess, true crime reference. Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated with psychology in general. And then I just, everyone was like, Jenna, you love animals. This is what you want to do. And so I was like, yeah, that's true. So I switched it up.
Sorry, did you say, when did you become full-time here?
I became full-time in 2018.
Okay.
So I just celebrated my 5th year anniversary as a full-time reptile keeper.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's amazing. So obviously we'll get into the snakes, and you're going to teach us all about them, but you do work with some other species, right? What is kind of like the breadth of animals that you work with in the reptile department?
Yeah, the beauty of reptiles is that we work with so many different kinds of animals, which is awesome. One of my favorites that I work with, I'm sure is a big guest favorite, are our Galapagos tortoises.
Yes, we're going to have you come on and talk to us about those.
I could talk
time.
about those guys for hours.
Everyone loves the tortoises.
They're
for
amazing. So, we've got turtles and tortoises. We've got salamanders. Our guests have seen our hellbenders, which is, our biggest salamander in the U.S. So they're pretty incredible. You also have your lizards. We just got our new Komodos in. So big lizards. We have small lizards, frogs, toads. There's so many things that we work with. So it's not just snakes, but, reptiles incorporate or encompass just a ton of diversity. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I always feel like it should be called like the herpetology department, but most people probably don't know the herpetology reference because I think the amphibians, I'm such an amphibian guy. Like I love salamanders, I love frogs and toads, and it's like that's what I would be most excited about if I was in the reptile department. Wouldn't even be the reptiles, it'd be the amphibians.
It's true, yeah. I think we've always been called reptile department and it rolls off the tongue a little easier, but to be more accurate, we are a herpetology department. We work in, even... I wouldn't say we actively study, but I think even studying the behavior of our animals we have in our zoo is still research in a way. So we are kind of herpetology, which is the study of reptiles and amphibians, and our department encompasses all of those animals.
So a lot of people don't necessarily love reptiles in general, but we know that snakes are one of the ones that people are most nervous about. So we've been kind of looking up and asking friends and trying to figure out why these snakes aren't loved or what causes the fear. So we wanted to ask you a few questions about like myths that are out there and see if you can help us change some minds about snakes.
Let's do it.
Change some minds. Maybe you'll say some of these myths are actually true. It's not myth, it's fact. Maybe you'll say some of these myths, nope, it's not true at all. We're busting this thing today. So we do have a list of myths that we've, like Jenna said, we found online or popular, we found through asking family and friends or kind of popular. The first myth that people always quote, they say, snakes are slimy. They're really gross. They're slimy. I don't want to touch them. Get them away from me. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that they're slimy. I would say maybe we're thinking of some sort of salamanders. There are some salamanders that have no legs, and some have very tiny legs. So maybe what you're thinking is a snake is just a really slimy salamander. Now, some snakes could have some stuff on them, depending on where you find them. Mud snakes, worm snakes, water snakes are going to be hanging out in water, in mud. So, but otherwise, snakes really aren't slimy. You don't really leave with nastiness on your hands like you would a salamander. Most of them are actually just pretty smooth and dry.
I was going to say, they don't produce any sort of mucus, and like you mentioned, they're dry. And when I was working at Wild Encounters, I would describe a lot of the snakes as feeling like a really smooth basketball. Like they have the little tiny bumps that are on a basketball, kind of like they're scales, but they're almost soft in a way. Is that what you like? Kind of. That's a weird thing to say, but
it's kind of hard to describe, right? So because different snakes feel different. I talked about that before. The Angolan python, I would say, feels straight like a basketball, very bumpy. But then you get something like you have a king snake or a cribo. These are they're so smooth that they do kind of feel soft in a way. It's just like such a smooth texture. It kind of feels really cool. But again, not slimy at all. You're just left feeling like, wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's such a cool aspect because both of you have a background with Wild Encounters. Like, I never worked in Wild Encounters, but I've heard the kind of reaction from guests before when they do get to touch a snake for the first time and they say, that's not at all what I thought a snake felt like. So I'm sure that's got to be really rewarding on the Wild Encounters end to have those experiences.
And I reference the hippos a lot just because that's what I work with the most, but hippos are slimy. Hippos are gross. Hippos produce mucus and are covered in poop half the time.
Yeah, what the heck?
I mean, snakes deserve the credit. They're going to be cleaner, drier, and probably softer. Honestly.
I can confirm, if you did a blindfold test and you touched a snake and then you touched a hippo,
You'd be very surprised,
you would say the hippo's disgusting.
Gosh, I wish we could do that with people. Let them, check it out for themselves. But so pretty much 100% a myth that snakes are slimy.
Myth. Stamp it. It's a myth. All right. What about the fact that snakes are quote unquote cold-blooded? They're cold-blooded killers out there. What would you say to that?
Oh man, well, I would say there's some truth to them being cold-blooded. So we actually prefer to call them ectotherms based on how their bodies work. So reptiles will need to use external sources to heat themselves up. So that's why they really rely on the sun a lot of the times to warm up for the day. Whereas us, we don't have to utilize the sun necessarily. So we're kind of going through our own body processes to adapt to the environment. So cold-blooded is something that has been coined for reptiles, but I would say the more accurate term is ectotherm, and they're definitely not cold-blooded killers, I think. I think that's more of an anthropomorphizing trait that people tend to put on them. I think they're just trying to hunt and survive in the wild just like any other animal is trying to do.
Right, they're predators. Of course they have to eat. They just aren't lucky enough as we are to go to the grocery, and that'll be handled for us prior to purchasing this food. So they're just feeding themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that one, there's maybe a little bit of truth to the background, but it's gotten taken to a little bit extreme, I think.
I think a little.
Yeah. All right. How about this one? You hear that snakes are very aggressive and they like to chase people.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty much a myth. Now, there could be some outliers out there. You could be seeing a mom maybe defending her eggs. Who knows? Moms can be very defensive with any species, I think. I think that's just a natural instinct. But to say that snakes are aggressive, I think is complete myth. For the most part, snakes want to avoid us. We're big and scary and loud. One of my favorite things to talk about, in particular, I think a lot of people may be really uncomfortable around rattlesnakes. But one thing that I think is super nice is rattlesnakes literally have an evolutionary adaptation to tell us what their boundaries are. They're giving us a rattling and saying, hey, I'm here, please don't come near me. I'm setting these boundaries. And a lot of rattlesnake bites are typically people who step on them or are just trying to handle them. A lot of snake bites happen on the hands, people not paying attention or messing with animals they probably should have left be. So I think when you'll find a lot of snakes, you come towards them, they're going in the opposite direction. I think aggressiveness depends if you're handling this animal. A lot of snakes, or anything really, if you're picking up a wild animal, that's a really scary thing for them probably, and who wouldn't want to defend themselves? So I think that needs to be taken into perspective.
Right, they're going to defend themselves, and of course, well, you can talk maybe a little bit more about it, but when they do bite or strike to catch their prey, they have to be fast. But oftentimes, like you mentioned, people who are getting bit by rattlesnakes are accidentally stepping on them because the snake is trying so hard to blend in and hide. The last thing they want to do is come out from hiding and find somebody just to bite them. So
exactly.
They're most likely just defending themselves or hunting if you see them move quickly.
Yeah, they for sure see you, and in their mind they're just like, please don't come over here. It's kind of a last resort because biting you is A, revealing where they are, and B, it can hurt some animals. They can lose some teeth. They can really mess them up too. So they don't want to bite you. They want to also, being an ectotherm, they need to conserve energy. So they are saving that energy for something that's necessary. So hunting. They need to wait for that food choice. Snakes, they don't eat every day. They're opportunistic. There could be a snake that doesn't eat for a month. And so they're waiting and they're saving that energy for when they can actually get food to survive. So them wasting energy on biting a person just is not worth it to them.
Yeah, I thought that one was interesting, and I feel like that kind of speaks to that would be someone's opinion who hasn't really spent any time around snakes, right? Because every time I've ever been out hiking or out in the wild at all, and you come across a snake, 99% of the times I've ever encountered a snake, it's trying to get away from me. It's not coming towards me at all. It's going the opposite direction.
It is, and I think you have to look really hard for snakes sometimes.
Yeah.
I'll go out, and we call it herping. So you're going out looking for snakes, looking for frogs, anything, reptiles or amphibian, and it is a chore. You're looking under things. They're really good at hiding. You could have come across a snake, for example, around Cincinnati. We've got black rat snakes. Those guys are actually pretty docile. I would say snakes are more curious than anything. You have a snake that maybe is not afraid, but they're flicking their tongue and they're just once they know that you're not going to hurt them, typically they're just kind of curious on what's going on. So, and then you let them go and they'll go on their way. So.
Yeah, will you elaborate on the flicking the tongue behavior? I think that's something that does creep some people out.
That's a good
People are like,
point.
why are they sticking their tongues out? That's creepy.
Yeah,
and the forked tongue doesn't help them at all.
Forked tongue does not help. Probably a bad stigma there. But so they have what's called a Jacobson's organ, and pretty much it contributes to their sense of smell. So the reason they have a forked tongue is it kind of helps them zone in on where the smell that they're looking for is at, what direction they need to go. And so when they're sticking their tongue out, if you're seeing a lot of that, that means they're picking up on all of these scents, and that's just how they're taking in their environment. They're smelling, their smelling doesn't work like we do. So that's how they're figuring out what's going on in their environment. So
just curious and
curiosity.
using their ability to figure out which is their tongue.
Yep. All right, I like that one. Another myth we have here is that snakes are so dangerous and all snakes are venomous.
Yeah, total myth. Total myth. So
Stamp it.
Total
myth.
Total myth. So, fun fact. So, we have over 3,000 species of snakes in the world, which is crazy. It's a lot of species. Now, put that in perspective, only 600 of those are considered venomous. To break it down even more, only about 200 of those are actually dangerous to people, meaning providing significant injury or even death. So you're talking around 7% of snakes can actually cause harm to a person. And depending on where you live, you could have no venomous around you at all. Cincinnati, we don't have venomous snakes, so we don't even have any of that percentage in there. So I think that's a really big myth, and that's one reason why a lot of snakes get killed. They're misidentified as dangerous. And so, you have snakes that look like venomous, or people just think that they're scary. But in fact, more snakes you see are totally harmless and just trying to do their own thing. And I would say even venomous snakes, there are some venomous that you get a bite and it may, it won't kill you. But you probably should still, make sure that you're seeking proper medical attention. But more often than not, you're going to be okay.
So something that goes with that is venomous snakes kill their prey with venom. But there's also this scary part of constrictors, or snakes that constrict their prey. Can you just talk about the feeding process and how it works, or the hunting process, I guess? Because are venomous snakes like biting and putting the venom into their prey and then wrapping around them, or are they just starting to swallow them whole? And then what's the difference between a constrictor biting their prey and then how? Like, can you just explain that process?
So it's super fascinating. So you've got your constrictor snakes, your pythons, your boas. Even rat snakes will constrict their prey. So a lot of snakes do this that aren't necessarily classified in that constrictor category. But these are snakes that usually have lots of teeth because they're designed to bite, wrap, and they're just trying to hold on, and they're squeezing, and they're constricting blood flow pretty much to that animal until they're able to consume. You have some snakes that don't. They actually more overpower their prey. So you're looking at king snakes will do this. They're snake eaters. So they will just start eating the snakes. King cobras, they do use venom. So there is also a different way of how venomous snakes eat.
Okay.
Not all venomous eat the same. So you've got a lot of rattlesnakes who have those iconic two fangs that you see in, skeletal structures. So these guys are designed for quick strikes. And then they pretty much are able to track the proteins of their venom and follow where their prey has eventually died. So they don't hang on. They tag and they wait. And then
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's very cool. So that's one thing we do when we take care of the snakes here. Sometimes for enrichment, we'll allow our snakes to kind of tag. It's frozen thawed always, so we don't feed live. But we'll offer the food to the snake, and sometimes we'll hide it somewhere. And that way they tag it, and then they're searching for it, which is something they would do in the wild. Whereas if you have, let's say, a king cobra, and a gaboon viper even.
That's my favorite.
Gaboon viper's your favorite?
Yeah,
they're amazing.
They're awesome.
If anyone was wondering, ours here is named Kudra, and she's amazing. She's awesome. But some snakes like that, they can't afford to follow or chase. Our gaboon is... they're designed to just sit. If everyone's ever seen her, she's very big-bodied.
She's
it's a
thick
lot of
with
energy.
it.
She's a thick.
She looks like leaf litter.
And
It's amazing.
She's supposed to blend in. She's not supposed to do much. But her, king cobras, some other snakes, they are designed to grab and latch on. And that's why these guys actually produce the most venom yield, because they're just hanging on and they're pumping venom because they don't want to let go what they have. So that's a difference between those two venomous snakes. But and so you'll notice that those guys don't have the bunch of little teeth. Kings are a little bit different than that, but gaboons also have the fangs. So usually that's for the pumping of venom. But your constrictor snakes, lots of tiny teeth, just so that they can try to hang on. Things are not going to willingly let them squeeze them. So they have to be able to hang on really tight to be able to secure that meal.
I didn't know they did the tracking. That's really interesting to me. Another reason they need to stick their tongue out and use their tongue.
Very important.
But so for the black rat snake, let's say, for example, they bite, but they're not considered a constrictor, but they will constrict. Is that correct?
They will. So think about if you see a rat snake in a tree, maybe, let's say it happens to get a bird. It is going to have to hang on and wrap around it so that bird won't fly away. So you've got rat snakes that do love to hang out in trees. So it's just an adaptation for them to just trying to secure a meal.
Why are they not considered like constrictors or in that same group? Is there a difference in?
It could just be the amount of maybe muscles that they have doing that. I'm not exactly sure of that because they're a whole different family of snakes. So rat snakes are considered our colubrids. So you've got your, your rat snakes, your, king snakes, things like that. But then you have your constrictor snakes, which are classically seen as your pythons and your boas.
And they seem, in my opinion, which is not probably, I don't know, thicker or like bigger bodied.
They are.
Than like a black rat snake. They're not
snake.
like the thin.
Yeah. They're designed, I think there's definitely a muscle difference.
Yeah,
When you're looking at a boa and a python versus a rat snake, a corn snake, things like that, you can feel the muscles in those snakes. But when you're talking about a boa or a python, it's just on a whole nother level. So.
Yeah. Will you humor me real quick? One of my biggest pet peeves in all of life is when people use the wrong term and they mix up poison and venom. Will you educate people on the difference between poison and venom? Because the first thing I noticed when I Googled venomous snakes is all of these articles listing poisonous snakes.
It's a challenge. Because it's, they seem to be in very similar categories, but there is a really simple way to think about it. So if something bites you and you get sick or injured from it, it was venomous. Now, if you bite something else or eat something else and it makes you sick, it's poisonous. So I think there's maybe 1 or 2 species of poisonous snake out there. We're still learning about what a poisonous snake is. But frogs, salamanders, don't eat a frog or salamander. They're poisonous. They're leaking this mucus, these toxins. Poison dart frogs are a common example. These are things that you eat. They're going to make you not feel well, just like certain plants. But yeah, as far as venom goes, that has to be injected into you. Whereas if you consume, that will make you sick.
All right, thank you for clearing that up for us. Hopefully our listeners will now not use the wrong term.
Like literally nothing bothers Mark, so that's really interesting to hear that really bothers you.
It's like one of my biggest pet peeves. Oh man! All right,
and fall. Wow.
Fall.
This guy hates
fall.
fall.
Don't even get me started on fall.
Oh my gosh! Don't show him a pumpkin.
Oh man! I'm gonna stamp it. Not all snakes are venomous. It's a myth for sure. All right, next one we have is it's quote unquote creepy the way that snakes will dislocate their jaws to eat.
I would say that would be creepy if it was true. So contrary to popular belief is they don't actually dislocate their jaws. They do have a function. It kind of looks like it, but they're able to manipulate their mouth to where they can swallow big prey. But they are in fact not dislocating their jaws to do so.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I just think it's really incredible. I was going to ask more about how they actually swallow their prey, and I think of the snakes that eat other snakes, and it's just like, where does it go? How can you explain that at all? Like, obviously they have an esophagus and a trachea, but how in the world do they have something just slowly moving through their long, straight body?
It's crazy.
Like, do their intestines curl up and fit together like ours do? Or are they one long line? Do you know? Or what helps the prey move through their bodies? Anything you can give us on that?
Yeah, I can probably... Excuse me. I can probably give something brief because I'm not super, educated on the total internal anatomy of the snake. I have seen some necropsies, which have been really fascinating. But I'll start with when a snake eats, a lot of people ask me, how are they not choking? What's going on there? So they do have like a esophagus where they eat and everything. But they also have what's called a glottis, which is where their tongue comes out too. And that's also where they're able to breathe. So there's like an extra thing that allows them to breathe while they're, consuming a relatively big meal. Their mouth is full and you're like, how is this snake breathing? They're still able to breathe. It goes down, and I would say that their intestines, if I'm correct, is definitely not quite like ours, but, their stomach is pretty long. It's just different shape than ours, and so it's just adapted to be able to handle, big meals like that. Because when you think about it, again, these snakes, they're not eating every day like we are. So they have to be designed to be able to eat large meals and then just sit in the sun and digest what they're eating. Which happens relatively quickly. Not as quickly as us, of course, but their stomach and their intestines are perfectly adapted to fit the meals that they're eating.
Do you know anything about what pushes the food back? Like, how are they drawing it back? Just muscles?
They're muscles. So when you watch a snake eat, you'll see that they're moving and they're kind of twerking their body and they're just moving that down. It's sheer muscle, which is another reason that they're super cool. Is they don't have any arms, so it's like, how are they doing this? They're just doing this just by the muscles of their neck and then all the way down.
That's interesting. And you did mention, a lot of these species are only eating once every couple weeks. That's true of our snakes here at the zoo, too, right? Mm-hmm. Like, most of them are getting, a meal every 10 or 12 days or something like that?
Depending on the species. Our gaboon viper, for example, sometimes she doesn't get a meal for 2 months. Depends on the size. Sometimes I'll give her a really big meal. And, her being an animal that doesn't move around a lot, she doesn't exert a lot of energy, she does not need to be overfed because you can overfeed a snake. Mm-hmm. It's very common, and you have to be careful not to because that ultimately affects their longevity and can cause other issues later on.
Wow, I didn't realize they would eat if they weren't hungry. There's some animals like us, humans, that will eat when we're full or eat even though we shouldn't eat something. But I didn't realize a lot of animals would overeat. I mean, hippos probably would. I didn't realize snakes would.
Snakes definitely will, especially animals who are very food motivated. King snakes are a really good example. They will eat almost anything. So yeah, you offer them a food item and they're going to eat. And so they're an animal that can quickly get overweight.
Okay. I guess if they're opportunistically eating, they're like, oh, here's an opportunity.
They're like, I'm going to get as much as I can because I don't know when I'll get it next.
Yeah, which is fair. All right, last couple I have. And I think these more depend on kind of what part of the world you're in, where you're from. But read a lot online thinking that people think that snakes are attracted to milk and snakes are attracted to music. And I think these come from a lot of kind of like the snake charming, like that kind of practice that was very popular in Asia for a long time. But would you say that from your experience, snakes are attracted to music? Or snakes are attracted to milk?
Yeah, I have heard the whole milk thing. In Indonesia, I've heard that people native to that area have set out bowls of milk for king cobras, and they've reported that king cobras will come and drink from these. I wouldn't say that they're attracted to the milk, but if that is true, it's probably just because it's a liquid source. It's something for them to hydrate themselves. Mm-hmm. I think if you were to put out a bowl of water, they would probably do the same thing. They have to be able to coexist with these animals in an entirely different way than we do here with the snakes that we have. So, and they seem to have a relatively good relationship with the cobras there, very healthy respect. So I think that's the whole deal with the milk thing, if I'm correct. As far as music, I would say they're not. I would say they're not attracted to music because snakes actually don't have ears. They can't hear, so they kind of respond. They have bones that actually respond to vibrations. So they have the ability to feel vibrations, whatever that means. So they can probably feel music. But if I were a snake, I would not be drawn to that. I would say that'd be kind of scary, and I'd probably go somewhere else. As far as the snake charmers, I think it's more of a visual thing. Cobras are really visual. Even our king cobra here, when we work with him, he's constantly looking around and seeing what's up. They're pretty smart animals, and so I think it's more of the motion of what those people are doing. That is, these snakes are following them and, just trying to see, what's going on. I'm going to keep a really close eye on you, kind of thing.
Definitely not the music that's doing it. It's
definitely
more kind
not
of the dance
music.
that the charmers.
Yeah, it's a myth.
Yeah. It's a myth. Jenna, that's all the myths that I have. Do you have anything else?
Well, not a myth really, but I think their movement, which we've talked a little bit about, is what kind of freaks people out. They don't have arms and legs, and they're moving across the ground, and sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's slow. Is there anything you could tell us to explain just how, the word slithery is used in these answers I received. Can you explain that at all, or teach us anything about their movement that might seem cool and less creepy to people?
Yeah, they do have multiple types of movement, depending on the snake species. And yeah, all I can say is, when you don't have arms and legs, it'd be kind of tricky to get around. So again, they're using their muscles.
Doing the best they can, folks.
Doing the best they can, guys.
So we should say to anyone who thinks they're slithery, try and get on the ground and move around without your arms and legs.
That's honestly a really great activity. Because, man, I feel like it'd be so hard to be a snake. Like, I think that all the things they have to do, climbing trees, you have rat snakes that can literally scale walls, you know? And they're doing this with pure muscle. And I think it's just the only way that they can get them, if you describe a snake as being super slithery, probably because they're moving in that S-shaped pattern and they're just trying really hard to get away, or that's the fastest they can move, is just moving their body in those particular patterns just to get away and find somewhere safe to hide. So, yeah, guys, I think they're doing the best they can with what they've got.
I think so too, and I think it's honestly fascinating seeing like you mentioned the different kinds of locomotion that snakes exhibit.
Yeah.
Like I've always seen like the videos on National Geographic and stuff of the sidewinders in the desert.
It's a classic example.
Watching them move across the sand dunes is like
it's amazing,
incredible stuff. Yeah,
and like a little sand boa burying itself is
down there. And they're just hanging out. You've got snakes that literally are trying to use their noses to dig. You've got them wrapping around trees, trying really hard to just get up in the tree. It's a lot of work.
Do you have any snakes that you particularly love or could tell us about?
Yeah, so I think a really beautiful snake that we have here in the United States is, of course, a corn snake. And one reason I really like talking about these guys is because I think that they are unfortunately the victim of a lot of bad stigma because they're really brightly colored. And I think one thing we always, learned when we were younger is if it's colorful, don't touch it, which is a good rule in general. I think when it comes to snakes, you should always know what you're looking at before you decide to do anything. But corn snakes are, one, really colorful, and two, they get mistaken a lot for copperheads, which are venomous. And so unfortunately, it ends up with these guys getting killed for, a lot of times. So
I'm surprised that they get mistaken. Like, I'm not super familiar with copperheads. And maybe I've just seen the brighter, like, more colorful corn snakes, but do they really look that much alike? Or is there...
I think if you aren't as familiar with snakes and you have a fear, I think they can be.
Okay.
Because there are some corn snakes that are bright and beautiful, but there are some that are actually a little bit more duller in color. Same with copperheads. You've got some darker, more dull copperheads, and then bright, beautiful copperheads. When you're also looking at babies look way different too. Okay. And so when you don't know what you're looking at, you may think that, this could potentially be a really dangerous animal. And corn snakes are something that people will probably encounter quite frequently, especially in the southeastern U.S. They like to hang out near where a lot of rodents are. So that's going to be barns, it's going to be cornfields, things like that. So a lot of rural areas will have corn snakes.
Which should be added to the list as why you should leave them alone, because they're going to help with the rodent population.
Of course. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you've ever lived on a farm or a rural property, you know that rodents are such a pain. Rodents, moles, shrews, things like that will affect your crops. Snakes are there to help you out, and they're not going to bother you. They really just want to leave you alone, and they just want to eat. You may see their snake shed every now and then, which could be a little creepy probably if you see one hanging around, but to me, it's a good sign. I think it's a good omen to have a snake because that means that they're kind of controlling that rodent population for you. And I didn't know if we also wanted to talk about, the good things about, snakes.
Definitely, yes. And also, I know it might be creepy, like you said, the snake sheds, but it's also incredible.
It's amazing.
That they somehow shed
everything.
I don't understand it, and it comes off during a good shed in one piece.
Yeah.
Like even their eye coverings
Their eye
are
caps.
attached. Like it's incredible that they can. Again, they don't have little hands to help
doing
peel
this all
this off.
themselves.
It's all muscle and
Yes.
movement and rubbing against things. And
Guys, they
just
have a
blow me
hard
away.
life, It's a lot of work. Sheds are amazing, And
Can you explain also why they do the shedding?
Yeah, I think the shedding is important because it helps them. You have baby snakes; they're constantly growing. So really, they shed. I mean, people shed, right? We just shed a little bit differently. We shed in more, flakes, even though it's kind of gross to think about it
worse,
that
yeah.
way. That's more gross than snakes, guys. Snakes do the same thing, but they just do it in one big stretch because it's more efficient for them, and it's part of their self-care. If they get an injury or have some sort of lesion, their body is triggered to shed that skin to help the healing process go a lot smoother. So that's another reason why they do it. It's pretty important. And you got to think that shed is probably food for different insects. I'm sure birds are probably using it for nests. So it does play its own part in the ecosystem as well.
It's very cool. I've never thought of it like that.
Yeah, I'm sure that birds are taking it. I mean, why not? It's
Right.
like soft and pliable. You can do whatever they do with it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think snake sheds are important. Corn snakes do that too. We forgot to talk about the bellies. If you ever see
Yes,
a corn
I
snake with a
wanted you to
belly,
mention that.
it has like a maze pattern. Super cool snake. Yeah, their
Maze
bellies
as
are
in
like
like
a
the
checkered.
pretty fall corn.
Yes, such a pretty fall snake, really.
Yeah, I think they're just a pretty snake. Not even for fall. I just think they're a pretty snake in general. Oh yeah.
They're like a decorative fall snake.
They're a perfect theme for fall.
Yes.
They should be a mascot for fall.
Honestly, if you're going through any corn mazes this year, leave the corn snakes alone. If you see a corn snake in the corn maze, just let the corn snake do its own thing.
It's thing,
But you mentioned or asked if we should talk about the good that snakes do, and absolutely. Tell us some of the things that people may not know, or just reiterate why snakes are good to have around.
Yeah, so pretty much snakes are super important to our ecosystem. So, and we've talked about venomous snakes, right? So obviously venomous snakes are scary. They can really do you a lot of harm. And if you get bit by one, it's no joke. But that is also why we respect wildlife, right? But we also have to think about the good that they're doing. So timber rattlesnakes, for example, which we have here in the U.S., it's been studied that where there are populations of timber rattlesnakes, there's actually less of a risk of Lyme disease. These animals are eating rodents that are prime carriers for ticks and therefore Lyme disease. So you have these timbers that are controlling this population, and that affects us. You know, any avid hikers
It's getting
out
worse
there
these days, I've heard.
It's a lot worse. They talk about climate change affecting all of this. You love your cats and dogs, but these ticks are no joke, and these timbers are kind of doing their part in helping us out there. You've got your copperheads. Copperhead venom is right now being widely studied in how it can affect breast cancer. So they're looking at how the proteins of this venom is targeting the tumors, and they're actually reducing the spread to the lungs, which is an effective way that breast cancer spreads. So, there's my people in my family have been affected by breast cancer, and I think that is an incredible thing that these snakes are able to help us out.
Can you explain to listeners like how they're helping and how they even get this venom to test it?
Yeah, so there are places like, Kentucky Reptile Zoo has so many venomous snakes, and their main goal and mission is to what they call milk their snakes. So these snakes are, they're living good lives, and every now and then they get milked. So they get, a vial of venom, and that venom is sent off to labs to be studied and, seeing what they can do with it. And through that, they've also been able to determine that venom is actually something that could possibly in the future prevent Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. And so all of these snakes, especially our U.S. snakes, we're figuring this out now, are able to contribute to that based on their snake venom. So snake venom is not necessarily a bad thing. It has its really good properties, and the great thing is these snakes aren't injured during this. Snakes are constantly producing venom. They don't have to be killed. They don't have to lose body parts in order to contribute to science. They are, literally living their best life, and occasionally maybe get a little uncomfortable getting some venom out, but it's, going towards a lot of really good research.
And the venom is not being extracted exactly by humans doing something to pull it out. They're actually biting onto...
Yes. So, how it works is the snake actually bites. It's a type of, I guess, a funnel with a plastic sheet over it, and the snakes bite it, and you can just see the venom going down, because it's like their instinct, right? It's to bite certain things, and that's how they get it. So the snakes aren't injured during this at all, and it's a pretty quick process. Kentucky Reptile Zoo, they can milk, 200 snakes in an hour. It's very quick. So you're talking about a very acute stress, which we've talked about sometimes in zoos, that acute stress is sometimes important for animals. It's something they would experience in the wild too. So it's really good work that they're doing.
This is something you may not know much about, but I just thought of it so snakes, their fangs are teeth, and they have holes, or I don't know what the correct word would be, for venom to just... tunnels, you know what I mean? Is there a word for that? The holes that the venom actually pours out of? Not pours, that's too strong of a word, but it is incredible that
it's like a syringe almost.
And that's how they pretty much equate it to, is like a hypodermic needle.
Okay.
It's like injection needle almost, and it comes from a gland. So the gland is contracted, and it sends it through kind of like a very tiny hole, but it's just like, squeezing a needle into something. And that's kind of how it works.
So interesting, though. We don't want holes in our teeth. That would cause a lot of issues and cavities and all sorts of things.
That's a good point. I've
never thought about it until now, and it's very interesting.
It is interesting.
Snakes are very cool.
They're fascinating, guys. They're amazing.
And oh my gosh, if they can help cure breast cancer, potentially, stop Alzheimer's, that would be amazing.
Amazing. And that's why we need to keep these animals around, not just for us, but but I think we need to be aware that these guys aren't just scary and just, wreaking havoc on everything. They're playing a super important part, So we've talked about the venom, we've talked about the rodents. Any avid gardeners out there, around here you've got garter snakes. They're eating your slugs, your snails, they're eating, things that could be potentially going after your gardens. So if you see a garter snake around here, let him do his thing. He's helping your garden grow, which helps pollinators, which we all love. We all appreciate here at the zoo. Anybody who's, part of their pollinator garden program here, garter snakes are a really important part of that too. So I think snakes are just, I think we just need to be more aware of why they're good to have around.
Yes, and that's why we wanted you here today, so thank you.
No problem.
Definitely. We love to hear about all the good that snakes do. I do have a question for you, though. Obviously, we've talked about, venomous snakes in the wild, just live and let live. Mm-hmm. But obviously, like you said, you do need to pay some respect to venomous snakes and just be aware of just kind of their power in general. You guys at the zoo, obviously, you have to handle venomous snakes in some regard. What kind of safety measures do you go through when you do have to handle venomous snakes?
Yeah, a lot of safety. So we do not free handle our venomous snakes. Like I said, these animals are super dangerous. You have animals like our king cobra, which its venom is extremely deadly. So we have anti-venom at the hospital across the street. We have a really good relationship with the staff there, and we actually run venom drills. So pretty much we have snake bite alarms in our building. And if one of us were to get bit, we have a protocol. We always work venomous with another person in the building. And if, we were to get bit, someone pops that button. And we've timed it to where, we've had the ambulance meet us, and we've gotten to the gate of our zoo in 7 minutes. So, and we're constantly trying to make that as short of time as possible because at this point, seconds matter depending on what species you've been bit by. So we're constantly, seeing how we can revise these protocols and these drills, but we use tools. So snake hooks are really important. You'll see a lot of people working venomous snakes using snake hooks. It's a really easy way for us to work these animals. We'll take them off habitat into containers so we can appropriately, clean the habitat and do what we need to do. Very minimal stress on the snakes. And our snakes have honestly been worked with so much that most of them are honestly really chill. I would say even our king cobra, very smart snakes. He and we have a routine. And he is, I wouldn't even classify him as aggressive. He's just curious, and he's used to a certain way we do things. And, none of us have ever been bit. None of us have even really had a close call. So,
and you've mentioned they're not here to go after things. If they
not.
feel threatened, then they're going to bite. But they can recognize and learn over time that you're not there to threaten them, or the way that you're moving or responding to their movements could
I think that's a really important thing that you brought up is how we're moving. So if you're handling a venomous snake, they're very much reactive to the person that's handling them. If you're tense and you're doing, really quick movements, that's pretty scary to a snake that doesn't know what you're going to do with them. So really, the more comfortable you are, the more, I guess, fluid with your motions you are with these animals and confident, they honestly are super easy to work. Really, they just want to know that they're going to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we have no problems. Our snakes are very comfortable. They're confident animals. And we have practiced how to work with these type of animals to know, how to not stress them out with our body language.
I don't know if you know this off the top of your head or if there is even this statistic out there, but a lot of people, are terrified of sharks, for example, and it's really important to remind people that we are killing thousands of sharks like an hour, I believe, and I don't know the correct statistics. I did at one point, but off the top of my head, we've talked about it on one of the episodes in the past, and sharks kill like 11 people a year, maybe. And again, don't quote me on those stats, but they're very, very low. Do you know anything similar to snakes or the odds of you being killed if you are bit by a venomous snake, like what are your odds of surviving or anything like that might help people realize your odds are so slim of being harmed by one?
True. Yeah. I mean, I would say in the U.S., we have it really a lot safer than a lot of other places in the world. You're looking at Africa, which has, your mambas, incredibly dangerous. You're talking about Indonesia, Australia. Everybody knows Australia's animals are crazy, right?
Yeah.
So we're pretty lucky with the animals we have. And as for me, someone who, a few months ago, I went to a spot that is ideal habitat looking for timber rattlesnakes. I've never seen one in the wild. 3 hours, my friends and I, we looked for these timbers, and we didn't see a single timber rattlesnake. These animals aren't just out there waiting to bite people. They're very hard to find. Snake bites, I don't have an exact percentage, but they're very low. And when you're talking actual, fatalities, it's also extremely low. Also depending on the snake species. So if you get bit by a copperhead, they have very, very low mortality rate. Their venom, it stinks. You definitely want to seek medical attention, but the odds of you dying is very, very low. Timbers, diamondback rattlesnakes, again, a more intense venom, but if you seek medical treatment, odds are you're probably going to be okay. And that's going to be the case for a lot of snakes in the U.S. So anyone can probably look up the statistics, and you'll probably realize that, it's really not as, I'm trying to think, life or death as it seems. Like it's, you don't have to worry about being killed by a snake. There are far more other things that you'll encounter in your day to day that could be more dangerous than a venomous snake.
Yes, and that's the hard part, right? Is so many people know that in their heads, but still they'll see something, and for whatever reason, there's this reaction that certain people's brains give off, like no spiders, snakes, and it's. Yeah. I really wish we could figure it out even more than knowing why people, might be afraid of them from these answers or questions we've looked up.
It makes you wonder. I think, media probably puts things into different perspectives. I think something I just heard, like you said, spiders, black widows. I don't think there's a single case of a black widow killing somebody.
Wow.
But we think of them as very scary, high venom. The bite would stink, for sure. But as far as taking your life, that's a whole new level. And we don't know. We don't think that there has been, a death. That's been actual documented, at least. But, if anybody... I know people are scared in general of snakes, but, keep in mind, too, that even snakes become prey items for things, which is important. As much as I love snakes, they play that role, too. Birds will, eat a snake here and there. You have snakes that eat venomous snakes. So if you don't like snakes in general, you could appreciate a non-venomous snake that actually takes out some venomous snakes. So
pretty impressive, too.
Yeah, maybe you can have one snake that, that you kind of like because of that reason.
Yeah.
But...
Awesome. Well, do you have anything else you wanted to mention before we move on to, I think Mark has trivia for us today.
Ooh. I do have trivia if you're up for it, if you're down to humor me.
Oh man, let's do it.
Participating. So we have mentioned it, a reason that I think that snakes get such a bad rap is just because the way they're portrayed in like pop culture and media, we've grown up pretty much our whole lives. And it seems like in every single TV show and cartoon, everything you watch, the snake's always the villain.
Yeah, snakes on a plane, right?
I feel like snakes have always gotten such a bad rap. So we're here to talk about some snakes in pop culture over the years.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
So one movie, and maybe you might be able to even debunk some of these and tell us if people need to worry about these snakes in real life, as if they're as scary as they are in the movies and TV shows. So one movie that I watched as a kid that I was actually, even though I like snakes, I was terrified by this movie. It's called Anaconda.
I knew that's what you were going to say.
It's a great movie, by the way.
So in the movie Anaconda, how many people does the titular anaconda kill and eat?
7.
Jenna's going with 7.
I'm going to say 12.
12. You're both a little high. So in the original one, it's actually, this one surprised me. In the original one, it's actually only 4.
What?
I remembered it being much crazier than that, but I guess as they made a lot of sequels, and the sequels started getting really crazy. And by the end of the sequels, they're killing like 30 people in a movie. But the original movie is only 4. But do you need to worry about an anaconda actually eating you?
I don't think so. I think it'd be really rare. No, it's hard because I think that there have been crazy instances where, you have a large snake and a relatively small person in the wrong environment, and maybe this snake mistakes you as another prey item. But in general, we're not on an anaconda's menu.
Yeah.
They're looking for other things.
Yeah, I think the same. I think there's probably 1 or 2 instances where this happened, and then it probably blew up and became this whole thing about their man-eaters and all that.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, next up, if you've ever seen The Jungle Book, a movie that I dearly loved as a kid, Disney's Jungle Book, Kaa uses what? Kaa's the boa in Jungle Book. Or maybe he's a python. I think he's a python.
Is he?
Regardless, Kaa in The Jungle Book.
He's a boa.
Kaa uses what ability to try to get Mowgli?
What, he hypnotizes him?
I just
He
watched this
hypnotizes
recently.
him. You got it.
Nice.
Hypnotism. Do we need to worry about snakes out there hypnotizing us?
I can say with 100%, no. You do not have to worry about it. Unless you're just mesmerized with how beautiful their
That's
eyes
what
are.
I was going to
Yeah.
say.
Because they are beautiful animals, and sometimes I'm mesmerized.
The first
by them.
time I saw a rainbow boa, I was mesmerized.
Oh,
I won't
man.
lie.
They're beautiful.
They're so gorgeous.
Yeah, if any snake's going to mesmerize you, it's going to be a rainbow
Yeah,
boa,
they're
for
gorgeous.
Sure.
I was interested to read this, though. Kaa, in the Disney's Jungle Book, he's obviously a villain, but in the original Jungle Book story, he's actually, like, on Mowgli's side. He's a protagonist in the story.
Whoa.
Yeah, he helps out Mowgli.
Well,
and
what
then
happened?
He got somehow
Right.
turned into a villain
See,
over
if
the
that
years.
would have come out in the movie, we
I
might be in
know.
a different place right
That's
now.
very true. Man.
Right. Disney, you need to do Kaa some justice.
Yeah, come on,
Yeah.
Disney.
It's his own movie.
Sir Hiss from Robin Hood,
Oh,
He's also
yeah.
a villain.
Yeah.
Also a villain, yeah. All right, number 3. In a famous horror movie starred in by Samuel L. Jackson, snakes are released onto what mode of transportation?
I'm going to go on a limb here and say a plane.
Snakes.
Canoe.
Snake is on a plane. If you've ever seen this movie, it's the most ridiculous movie.
I actually
you'll
have
ever
not
watch.
seen
It's pretty
it.
crazy. You're in for a wild ride.
You're in for a ride. I think it got like a horrible rap at the start because people thought it was like supposed to be a serious movie, and I think if you just watch it as a comedy,
Oh.
it's much better.
That's true. That's true. It's all about perspective. You can't take it serious.
But it's like, Jenna, if you haven't seen this movie, it's like they're trying, I forget the exact story, but it's like this guy is trying to kill this witness in a trial or something, so he finds out the flight he's on, and he releases like 100 venomous snakes.
Quite the
onto
way
this-
to go about that.
Yeah, onto this
It's like
plane.
a mastermind.
Yeah.
Wow. Try and hurt everyone, use a
Oh my
bunch of
gosh.
snakes. That's really easy to
Yeah.
get on a plane. And we forgot to give a spoiler alert for that one.
Oh, spoiler alert! You haven't seen Snakes on a Plane. It came out like 20 years ago, but spoiler alert.
That doesn't count. It came out so long ago.
That's an interesting way to
Also,
kill
can I
someone.
just say that when you have venomous, quote-unquote venomous snakes in a movie, I always have a really fun time looking at what snakes they're using because they're not venomous snakes. Typically, they are corn snakes, a lot of rat snakes, king snakes, and ball pythons. Fun fact.
What are the snakes? Milk snakes and
Oh, milk snakes are another one.
what is the one that they look like?
A
That?
coral snake.
Oh, coral
coral
snakes. They
snake.
use milk snakes
Yes.
for coral snakes.
Okay,
yes,
yes.
because they look so alike. But yeah, like Indiana Jones and the Snake Pit and things like that. If you look closely, you'll be able to look at what kind of snakes those are. Not venomous.
I think
Unless they're CGI. There's some fun CGI
I think it's the
ones
same
in
thing
there.
on Snakes in a Plane. Like, I think there's like a lot of like ball pythons
a lot of
in
ball
there,
pythons.
and
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
none of them.
I find it fun. I think it's hilarious.
But honestly, what we've learned from this discussion is if snakes actually were brought on a plane, they'd probably be just like hiding in the luggage area, honestly. I don't think they'd be going after anyone.
They would not come out of those guppies.
There's a takeaway.
All right, last one we've got here. We're on a roll so far. And maybe the biggest disrespect to a snake. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, how does the basilisk kill people? The basilisk is this
lizard,
massive,
isn't it?
like...
Oh.
I think the basilisk is it's a species of lizard, yes. But in the movie, the basilisk is the name for a snake.
Oh.
But in real life, yes, it's
okay.
a basilisk lizard.
I'm not a...
You're right.
Maybe this will get me... I'll lose points. I'm not a Harry Potter person.
We both got canceled today, Jenna.
Whoa!
Jenna just canceled both of us.
Man. Harry Potter is like the fall movie, too.
Oh,
you know?
man. Maybe I'll have to give it a shot.
Oh, my
Get
goodness.
into it this spooky season, yeah. But how does the basilisk... Yes, you're right. I think it's a lizard in real life. But in the movie, it's like this 50-foot massive snake. But how does it kill people? You can guess first if you haven't seen the movie.
I haven't seen it. Is it like some crazy Harry Potter wizardry? Is it a constrictor?
Constrictor?
You can't look him in the eyes.
Yeah, you can't look him in the
it's like
eye.
Medusa situation?
Yeah.
Kind of,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Petrified.
That's like the disrespect they gave to the snake. It doesn't even need to touch you. It just looks you in the eyes and you're dead.
Well,
I'm
can we
like,
also talk about... So initially I thought you were going to talk about Nagini. Which
Oh,
was
yeah.
Voldemort's snake.
Yeah.
And, I was like, come on.
I know. Nagini, who... Our dear Nagini
Our dear
here, rest
Nagini.
in peace.
Yes.
We had a Burmese python named Nagini who just passed away. She was so sweet.
She was amazing.
I mean, I always thought it was interesting. I worked with Nagini for a short time in Night Hunters, and like named Nagini, right? I'm like, this thing's going to be mean, and it's going to be this crazy snake. It's the sweetest,
She was
most
the
gentle
sweetest.
python in the world.
Yeah. We would
How
take
big
her-
was she?
She ended up being about 15 feet.
Wow.
So 15 feet, over 100 pounds of just, amazing snake. We'd take her out of her habitat and we'd take her outside to get some sun. And she just, again, using the tongue, cruising around. She's not going to strike at anybody. She was the best. We missed her
sorry.
a lot. That was a rough one. Yeah.
She was sweet.
She was super sweet.
I didn't know she was named after a Harry Potter character.
She was. So another good talking point, because we're like, this Nagini, it's very nice, actually. So, not like Voldemort's Nagini.
Harry Potter, that's what I'm saying. Like, Harry Potter was disrespecting snakes
A little
out
disrespectful,
there. They were.
yeah. Come on, JK, Rowling.
Oh, man. Thanks for humoring me with
No
trivia.
problem.
Do we have anything else for Jenna while we have her?
Just our final, what can I do? How can I be a better steward of the earth?
Yeah, I think one thing I would tell anybody is, let's, we need to do better at just knowing what snake species we have around. I think one of the biggest killers of snakes is just our lack of knowledge of them. Like I talked about the corn snake, if we just know, like, hey, that's a corn snake, it's not going to hurt me, leave it be. It's not going to hurt you at all. It's not venomous. It's actually doing you a solid favor. Same with most of our snakes around here, especially in Cincinnati. And if you do come across a venomous snake, maybe reach out to somebody who's comfortable relocating. We talked about how important they are to our environment, to our ecosystem, how their venom is actually benefiting our health. So I think it's just important to put into perspective the roles that these guys play and just kind of just being familiar with what wildlife we have around here. And let's make sure that, if it is venomous, let's just keep a healthy, respectful distance. They're not going to bother us at all. They don't want to. So that would be what I tell people is just give them a chance.
If I don't even know if I should say this, but if somebody saw a snake, let's say they know it's non-venomous, but they still didn't want that snake, let's say in their garage, how would you recommend they move it? Is there a way that's safe for the snake and safe for a person? Is there a good idea for that?
You can use, honestly, if you have a stick or just any kind of tool you have, you can put it in a garbage bin and maybe just put it out in the forest somewhere. Or you see if you can have a neighbor. Sometimes there are places you can call that will remove the snakes for you. There's also reptile rescues that might do that as well. There's always somebody around that can help you remove a snake. But yeah, using the tools of what you have to your disposal. You don't have to get hands-on with it if you don't want to.
But be gentle with it,
Very gentle. Yeah, they're tough, but they're also a lot smaller than we are, and they are prone to getting injured. They've got a very fragile spine also, so... some people have grabbers, which you can use, but you have to be super gentle. You don't want to squeeze the crap out of them. Mm-hmm. Just be mindful of what they are.
Great. Well,
just live and let live.
Live and let live. Yeah. Exactly.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for teaching us so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I hope if we made one person decide they are no longer afraid of snakes, then I'll call this a success.
It was a win,
So,
yeah.
I think it'll be a win. I feel good about it.
Well, happy fall, y'all.
Yeah,
Fall's the best.
Spooky season. I'm gonna go watch Anaconda, honestly.
I'm gonna go watch Snakes on a Plane. And Jenna's gonna watch Harry Potter.
There we go. We all have assignments.
There we go.
Have a great week. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.